Hey everyone, welcome back to Wix Fix. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Ryan, and in today's video, we're going to be doing another Velo Animation project by Wix. Now, if you did miss our first episode, we kind of did the beginner Velo Animation project by Wix, and in today's video, we're going to kind of be doing the intermediate one. So if you want to go back and check out the beginner one, I will leave that linked in the description. But like I said, we're going to be doing a intermediate Velo Animation project by Wix. So if you would like to follow along and do this for yourself, there's actually going to be another link in the description below that you can actually go ahead and follow along if you would like. And the cool thing is we can actually just view the example here real quick. And here is what we're going to be creating. When we hover over certain things are going to happen. So micro interactions basically. So if we hover over micro interactions, this kind of does like a little shake and wiggle. If we hover over text, you'll notice that the arrow kind of moves back and forth. And then if we hover over images, it kind of shows images and hides them. So we're basically going to be recreating this and kind of showing some different things you can do with Velo Animation. And the cool thing about this project is it actually already provides the code and kind of shows you how to build it if you want to. But in today's video, we're primarily just going to be focusing on inserting the code to kind of understand what's going on. But we can just go ahead and press edit now, and it's going to open up a brand new editor for us with all of the content that we will need for this project. Now, the first thing that I'm really going to do is go ahead and delete all of the code that it comes with, because again, we'll be putting this in ourselves. So we'll just go ahead and delete all of this for now, and we'll go ahead and insert it ourselves. The first thing that we'll actually need to do is import our APIs. So what we're going to do is say import, and we're going to say timeline from Wix Animations. Just like that. Underneath that, we'll need to import another one. So we'll say import, and we'll say form factor, and we'll say from Wix window. Okay. And timeline is what's going to help us with the Wix animations, and then form factor is basically going to allow us to edit the mobile version of this effect here as well. But now that we have our APIs, you'll notice that they are grayed out, and that's because we don't have any code actually referencing these APIs yet. So once we start adding the code in here, then you'll notice that these will no longer kind of be grayed out. But the next thing that we'll actually need to do before we start coding the interactions is let's go ahead and create our constant for mobile. So we'll say const is mobile is equal to form factor and triple equal to, and we'll say mobile. This is mobile variable is basically going to allow us to create the animations for mobile as well. But now we can go into the onReady function. We'll just give us some more room to work with, and we'll create a couple more constant or variable elements. So we'll say const, we'll say micro, and this is going to equal this text right here. So if we go ahead and click this, we'll see it says micro text. So we're going to say $W, and we'll find micro text here, just like that. The next thing that we're going to do is say constant images. And this is actually going to equal this text right here. So it's going to equal image text. So we'll say image text right here. Perfect. Now let's create another constant. We'll say image1, and this is going to equal to the image that says first image. So we'll do this, $W, and we'll grab first image. Then we'll create one for image2, and this is going to equal second image. Then let's create a constant called to, and this is going to equal the to text. So we'll go ahead and say $W, and we'll grab to text. Create another constant. We'll call this text, which is going to be this text right here. So we'll say equals to $W text. And last but not least, we need to grab the arrow. So we'll say constant arrow is going to equal to $W arrow. Perfect. So now we have all of our variables set, and now we can go ahead and start creating the functions for what happens when the user hovers over these things, or hovers over these different elements. So we'll come down here and we'll say we will need to create a constant called shiver. And this is going to equal to a timeline. And inside this timeline, let's go ahead and add some curly brackets, and we'll say repeat is equal to -1. And basically what that means is when the user is hovering over this text, it's not going to stop shivering or applying the animation effect until the user stops hovering over that element. So -1 basically repeats the animation over and over and over until the user basically tells it to stop. But we'll do the start and stop stuff here in a few minutes. The next thing that we'll need to do is say .add, and we want to affect the micro text, which micro is what we basically called up here. So we're going to say we want to affect micro with the animation, and what we want to do is say duration is equal to 50, and then we're going to say comma, and then x is equal to 2, comma, y is equal to 1, just like that. Then we'll go to the next line and we'll say .add. Again, we want to affect micro, and we'll add some curly brackets and we'll say duration is equal to 50, which is basically half a second. And I accidentally added straight brackets instead of curly brackets at the top line, so we'll go ahead and adjust that. For the second line, duration 50. Again, we want to do x, and we'll set this one to -2, comma, y will be -1. Okay, perfect. Then we'll say .add again. Again, we only want to affect the micro, and we want to add curly brackets. We'll say duration is equal to 50, which is half a second. X is going to change to 1. And Y is going to change to 2. Perfect. Now say .add again. We'll say micro, comma, and we'll say curly brackets. Again, we'll say duration 50, comma, x is going to equal -1, and y is going to equal -2. Okay. Then let's add 2 more lines. So this first one, we're going to say .add micro. We're going to say duration 100 for this one. We'll say comma. We're going to say rotate. One. And then on the outside of the curly brackets, we'll say comma 0. And then we'll do one more line. We'll say .add micro, comma, curly brackets, duration 100. Then we'll say rotate again. We'll say -1. And then on the outside of the curly brackets, we'll say 100. Perfect. So now we basically set up what will happen to this micro text. But in order for this to actually happen, what we need to do is come down to the bottom. And we're going to say micro dot on mouse move in. we're going to say shiver dot play, just like that. And then underneath that, we'll need to set the off command. So we'll say micro dot on mouse move out, shiver dot replay dot pause. And now when we go ahead and press preview and we check out this micro interaction, we should see that. And that looks really, really cool. Does exactly what we wanted it to do. But now we have only completed one of the 3 animations. Now we can go ahead and start working on the arrow and text thing right here. So let's go ahead and create a new const. We'll call this one slide. And this is going to equal timeline. And we'll do curly brackets. And once again, we'll say repeat is equal to -1. Perfect. And just like before, we can go to the next line and say dot add. And what we want to affect in this one is the arrow. Perfect. So we'll do comma, then we'll do curly brackets. We'll say duration is equal to 400. Now for this one, we're going to try to be affecting mobile a little bit. So we're going to say X is equal to is mobile with a question mark. I'm going to say -19 and 48, just like that. Now with this one, we'll also be applying some easing. And if you aren't aware of what easing is, it's basically what kind of adds the fluid feel to your animations, makes it more natural. Instead of just from point A to point B, it can like just seem a little bit more natural. This is something that is kind of hard to explain without a visual, but if we come over to like the test site, you see how like the arrow kind of slows down at the end of its animation. That's kind of what easing does. Instead of just going from point A to point B very directly, it kind of adds like a little slowdown and speed up function to the animation. Again, I will be making a video on that soon, so be on the lookout for that. But there are several different types of easing, and we're going to be using ease out sign for this one. Perfect. Let's go down to the next line. We'll say dot add. For this one, we actually want to affect the to text. We'll do comma, and we'll say curly brackets, duration is going to equal to 200. X is going to equal to is mobile, question mark, -8, semicolon, and -12. For easing on this one, we're going to choose the same one. So we're going to say ease out sign. But on the outside of the curly brackets, we're going to say comma. We'll do these semicolon things, and we'll say minus equal to 32. Then we'll go down to the next line. We'll say dot add. For this one, we want to affect the to text again. We'll say duration 200. For this one, we're going to say X is equal to 0. And we'll do comma, easing, and then ease out sign again. Underneath that, we'll say dot add. For this one, we want to affect the arrow. The duration will equal 400. X will equal 0. And easing, of course, we'll do ease out sign. But then on the outside of the curly brackets for this one, we will do negative equal 370. And actually for these past two ones, we actually need to do ease in sign. My apologies. It's not ease out, we need to do ease in. And now for this animation, we only have 4 more lines of code. So we'll say dot add. We want to affect the arrow again. Then we'll add some curly brackets and we'll say duration is equal to 400. X is going to say is mobile. Question mark 19 and 48. Easing will be ease out sign for this one. Now we need to affect the text. So we'll say dot add. We'll say text. Say duration 200, comma X is mobile, question mark 8, 12. Easing will be ease out sign. But then for this one on the outside of the curly brackets, we're going to say negative equal to 32. And we forgot to add the comma here, just like that. Okay. So now we only have 2 more lines here. So we'll say dot add. This one we want to affect the text. The duration is going to be 200 for this one. X is going to equal to 0. And easing is actually going to be ease in sign for this one. And the last line here is dot add. We need to affect the arrow. The duration is going to equal 400. X is going to equal 0. Easing is going to equal ease in sign. But on the outside of the curly brackets, we'll say comma, minus equal, or we'll do semicolons, minus equal 370. Okay, so now we have slide done. So now what we need to do to play slide is we'll come down over here. And what we will say is when text, we'll say text on mouse in, we will use slide.play. Then when the user hovers off the text, we need to now say on mouse out. We'll do slide dot pause. Okay, so I think I just forgot to add a negative in between this 48. So now let's go ahead and check it again. And that was it. Now it's working perfectly fine. Awesome. So now we can go ahead and begin work on the last one, which this one is not as long and won't take as long to do. So we can go ahead and begin working on this one. Now this one, we're going to do it a little bit different. So we're going to say timeline, some brackets. We're going to say dot add. And inside this add, we're kind of going to create an array a little bit. So we're going to say image 1, comma, image 2. And then on the outside of these straight brackets, we're going to say comma. With some curly brackets, we're going to say duration. Zero, comma, opacity. We're going to set this to 0. On the outside of these curly brackets, we'll say comma 0, and we'll say dot play. Okay. Now underneath that, let's create a new constant. We'll say dot show, and we'll equal this to timeline, just like that. Underneath that, we'll say dot add, and now here's where we kind of add the effect. So we're going to say image 1, comma, we'll say duration is equal to 0. X is going to be equal to 80. And Y is going to be equal to -40. Okay. Underneath that, we'll say dot add. What we want to affect on this one is image 2. We'll say duration. Again, we'll say 0 because we're kind of setting up the pre-hover right now. Then we'll say X is equal to -80. And Y is going to be equal to 40. Great. Underneath that, all we need to do is say dot add. For this one, we actually need to affect both image 1 and image 2. So we'll do straight brackets. We'll say image 1, image 2, just like that. Then we'll do comma, and we'll say duration 1000. Which is basically just 1 second. Then we're going to say opacity, and we're going to equal this to 1, which is going to be 100%. Perfect. And what I want to do is just go ahead and copy this. And what I want to do is just go ahead and copy this code and bring it down. But instead of opacity here, what we want to do is say X is equal to 0. Y is equal to 0. And easing is going to equal ease out quad. So ease out quad. And on the outside of these curly brackets, we'll do comma 0. So just like we did before, down here, what we need to do is say images dot on mouse in. We want show to play. Just like that. And then now we say images on mouse out. We need to say show dot reverse. Now we didn't do pause here, and if we go in preview, I'll go ahead and show you why. So when we hover over this element right here and we hover off, the text is still there. It just kind of no longer does that effect. Same with this one down here. As soon as we remove our cursor off text, you'll see that the arrow stops wherever I stopped hovering. So if I hover it on here and I take it off here, you'll see it kind of stopped in the mid range. However, with these images, when I hover over it, we want the images to show, but when I take my cursor off this text element, we want the images to hide. And that also kind of showed you that it is working. And we have successfully added all of these interactions to our Wix website using Velo. Now I will say some of this is a little bit complex, especially once you start getting into like the is mobile area. If you guys want a tutorial on that, let me know in the description below. And again, I will already plan on releasing a tutorial in the future about the easing property in Velo Animations. But that's basically gonna wrap it up for today's video. If you all did enjoy, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel for more Wix and Editor X content coming out really soon. Thank you all again, and I'll see you all in the next one.